Hello and welcome. It's the month of April. Students of class 12th are just done with their board exams, and now there's a rush to fill examination forms for admissions to undergraduate courses. For students who are in their final year of undergraduation, they will soon be looking towards the job market or for their post-graduation studies. And to both of these set of students, if you tell them to go for a gap year, it may sound unconventional, especially in the context of India. But today in this special conversation, I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Chris Whittle, who is the executive chairman of Baret Scholars. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Good to be here.
And he's going to tell you about why this is something not unconventional and how this program will actually help students. So my first question to you, you talk about this program getting students out of their contexts and into the world. Give us a sense of what this program is and what do you mean when you say that you're taking students out of their context, the participants out of that context and taking into their world.
I grew up in a small village in the South in America, and I was lucky during my university days. I studied some abroad in Czechoslovakia, but then I had an opportunity to do an entire year circling the world, and it changed my life in ways that I didn't really understand then, but as I went through my life, that year was one of my most important ones, and it took me out of my microcosm bubble, if you will.
Another interesting statement that we pick up, Chris, is that this is not a course but an intense experience. This is not a year off but a year much on. What do we mean when we say this? How is this program's differentiation being established from other gap year programs when we set and look at this program in this context?
Most of those are short, they're a month. Most are to one region of the world, and most are not educationally weighty. What we've done at Baret is create a global gap year program that goes to the 7 key regions of the world. Of course, one of those being here in India, and then that also, without tests and exams, etc., is a significant learning experience. We think of it as a 5th year of college, and it's as if you did a master's in international affairs before you did your bachelor's.
What went behind designing such an extensive course, and in the contemporary times, what was how would you justify the need of such an extensive course in a global gap year setting? Tell us about that.
In the old days, knowing your country was enough. It isn't anymore. To be culturally literate in today's world, you have to know the world in a way, and it doesn't mean you just have to know Europe or the United States. You've got to know the world, and in your work, you're going to be better in your work, better in your college education, and better in your life from being exposed to and a part of all the key cultures of the world.
Sure. But Chris, this is an expensive program, given the fee, the structure, the tuition fee, what I was going through. This is something, that people actually in India are spending to go out after their schools or graduation years and spending for universities in, let's say, in US and Canada. How is this price point being justified? And how are we, sort of including and ensuring representation from diverse economic backgrounds? Tell us something about that.
It's two questions, really. The first question, this cost what a fifth year of college at a leading U.S. university would cost. That's what it is. In terms of how a parent or a student justifies that, it really ensures that you get the most out of your college experience. Families that are sending students to top universities, they're spending a lot. This ensures that their first year is a good year, that their whole college experience they get the most out of. And one thing I like to say is that as they sit next to their fellow students in the years ahead, they have a very different perspective and are more competitive in every way. On how we represent all spectrums, we have 2.5 million of scholarship funds that we spread across the world to recruit students from different economic situations. Very similar to the way colleges and universities do that.
So what's the kind of response as of now that you've started getting from India? Tell us something about that. What's the demand coming in? What are the kind of candidates that are, showing their interest for this?
I've been at events over the last 3 days in Delhi and Mumbai, and we have significant ties to India. In each major region, we have what we call a head of country, and Farhad Anklesaria is our head of India and has extensive experience in the country. It's been a fabulous reaction, and I would say worldwide. In the last 2 weeks, I was in Brazil, China, Korea, and India now, and parents and students not only understand this, but are excited and understand why it's important.
So, just a connected question to it. Are these students who have just passed out more students who have passed out their high schools, or somebody who has completed their undergraduation? What's the ratio you're seeing as of now? Are these students who have just passed out their high school who are applying for this, or these are undergraduates who want to opt for a gap year before actually going into the job market?
We have 3 groups that are applying. Most of them have just graduated from high school, meaning are graduating in 2 months. Some are in between their their 11th grade and their 12th grade in high school. And some have completed a year of college and wish they had done this. So it's a 3-year age span, yes. And by the way, we have applications today from 60 different countries around the world.
So what's the market size of this gap year programs? Who are some other, I will not ask you some competitors, but what's the size that you are trying to capture in this, given the market that we may be having for these programs?
There are 58 million high school seniors in the world. And in our first year, we are accepting 180. And I should mention, 25 come from India, 25 come from China, 25 come from South America, etc. The market size, even though we know most of those 58 million cannot afford this and would only be able if we do scholarships, the market worldwide is enormous, and we're a tiny portion of it.
Now you mentioned about the kind of application response that you're getting, but what exactly you're gauging when students are applying? I mean, you have a selection process. What is it that you're looking for when it comes to selecting the students for this program, 180 students initially?
Number one is that they are genuinely excited about it, and they want to do this. They understand why this is important. 2, we look for students that are going to bring something to the one-year experience. And we particularly like students that are very good at something, and whether that be technology or music or art or film, we want a cohort that has many different skills. Grades matter. If a student had D's and everything, they're not going to get in. But it's not our primary,
it's not the primary
criteria. And then we look for responsible students. This is a long journey. It's in many different cultures. And we want students that both look after themselves, but also look after their colleagues.
Chris, from a macro perspective, I want to understand that in India, I'm just telling you something, that a gap year on their CVs is not looked in a good light. What's the scenario compared when we look at some other countries, let's say US? Because in India, clearly, it's not seen with a very enthusiastic response. So in that background, if you could tell something about why this program, somebody should go for it.
I'm going to give you an important data point.
Yes.
A few days ago, Harvard University sent out its acceptance letters.
Okay.
In that acceptance letter to their students, they encourage a gap year. The point is, Harvard knows that students do better in their college experience if they take a gap year. In some parts of the world, gap years are viewed as for students that didn't do well. That's not what this is about. It's for the best students to do even better. And it has a long tradition. In the 1600s, in Europe, you were not viewed as having completed your education until you did something called the Grand Tour, which was to visit the capitals then, it was of Europe. This is a modernized Grand Tour that goes far beyond Europe.
Sure. Chris, also tell us about these 15 mentors that will be there, with these students. How were they selected, and what would be their role, in terms of mentoring? Tell us about that.
Traveling with the 180 students are 15 fellows. A fellow is 10 to 15 years older than the student, and they each come from a field. So one might be a journalist, one might be an engineer, one might be a doctor, one might be somebody that specializes in environment. Think of those in a Oxford-Cambridge sense as the tutors that are working with the students across the year. And they each have 12 students that they watch over. And then each month they do a fellowship of 10 days in their specialties in each region.
From when did this process start of going out and hunting for these fellows? And in fact, the whole program.
We began research and development on this 2 years ago. We are a team of 20. All of us have studied abroad. We have graduated from Oxford, Cambridge, Yale, Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, Penn. So we've been very lucky in our education experiences. And we assembled the original team over the last 2 years. And then we're appointing right now the fellows, and we'll be announcing that on our website.
Sure. You mentioned about the map, the countries that will be covered. Of course, India is part of that program, New Delhi as the base. Tell us about India's significance in this program, and what could the students, the participants, expect when they are here for the India leg?
A student cannot be culturally literate in today's world without an understanding of India. It's the largest country in population on the globe, having just passed China. It's one of the fastest growing economies on the globe. It is a huge part of the future of the next century.
Right.
And a student that doesn't know India does not know the world. And
Right.
so there was no way we could do this without being in India. And we chose Delhi
Right.
because it's the center of government, has huge cultural
Absolutely.
institutions, and it's
Sure.
obviously a very, very important place to be.
So Chris, this program will be starting in September of 2024 and will be ending in May 2025. So when the students are done with their program in May 2025, if you would have to list 5 things that they would be well versed after this course, and how ready will be they for when they're entering the real world, entering the job market after this.
1, they will go into their college experience not stumbling into it, but really with a plan to how to get the most out of it. 2, they'll have an incredibly new set of friends from around the world, and friendships, the longest friendships often occur when someone is involved together in an intense. 3, they will have something on their CV for life. And in a future interview, someone's going to say, tell me about your Baret year, because people are going to understand that they lived in key parts of the world. And by the way, I think it will not only be interesting, but it will impact how they're viewed for certain posts. And important to me, because I did this, they're going to understand the world and more. I'm a bit of a China expert. I've spent a lot of time in China. And so you don't get to know it immediately, but I remember my early days in China, and they will never read a newspaper the same way. Because when they read about India, they were there, and they will remember from that.
Okay. My last question to you, you had a illustrious career in media as well. What brought your journey here?
I first began in your world, in magazines and television in the United States, and built one of the 100 top media companies in America. Much of what we did was media for students, and so mid-career I went, I'd like to move from media to actually founding schools. And over a 30-year period with the president of Yale, who was my partner, we founded 100 schools around the world, including the largest private school in New York City today. And Baret, in some ways, combines the engagement of media with the rigor of education, and I view it as a culmination of my career. I will mention one more thing you might find interesting. I did this 50 years ago. 20 years later, my university asked me to fund 200 4-year scholarships at my university for the best students. I said, I'll do it if you add a 5th year. And in the years after that, students that wrote to thank me for that, they always talked about the 5th year, not the 4th.
Well, Chris, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time, and we wish your team and as well all the participants who will be forming the foundational batch of this program a best of luck and all the best for the journey.
And we look forward to being in Delhi with 180 students this time next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.